Microphone stuck.
This meeting is being held in compliance with the Brown Act. SCAG offices are open for members of the public to attend and participate in person. Instructions for providing public comment have been provided in advance and are also included in the agenda packet. If a member of this body is attending remotely but is not at a location specified on the agenda, they may observe and comment as a member of the public, but may not participate in any member discussion or voting of this body. For all members participating remotely, please ensure your microphone is muted when not in use. Please state your name during deliberations and whether making a motion or offering a second. Any voting member or member of the public calling into this meeting by telephone can press *6 to mute and unmute. All telephone participants should identify themselves prior to speaking. SCAG encourages all members of the public to participate in its meetings. We are committed to holding meetings accessible to people with disabilities. For members of the public requiring ADA accommodation, please call 213-630-1410. SCAG offers free interpretation services for members of the public needing information in another language. Please call 213-236-1895. The meeting will now begin.
Good morning, everyone. Just for those of you who are online, just want to give you a heads up that the EAC meeting is still ongoing. And as soon as that meeting is over, we'll go ahead and get this meeting started, meeting of the Transportation Committee. Just give me a thumbs up to make sure that everybody online or virtual heard me. Great. Excellent. All right. We'll get started shortly. Thank you, everyone. Just want to let everyone know that the EAC meeting has finished and we'll start here shortly, probably in the next couple of minutes. Good morning, everyone. Today is Thursday, April 3rd, 2025. The meeting of the Transportation Committee is now called to order. I've asked the Honorable Jan Harnick to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Jan. At this time, I'd like to ask Ed if you can please confirm quorum.
We show a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Very good. All right. Also want to now open the public comment period for the meeting. Staff, have we received any written public comments after the deadline of 5 p.m. on Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. We have not received any such comments.
Very good. Thank you, Ruben. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak at this time? Not seeing any. Very good. I think we're good. I will now close the public comment period for matters not listed on the agenda and move us into the action item. All right. So our first here is a consent calendar. I think that's our only voting item. So we can just take that. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on the consent calendar? Are there any members here? I'm not seeing any hands raised. Virtually, I'm not seeing any hands. I'll be happy to entertain a motion. Very good. We have a first and we have a second. Ed, do you want to lead us through the vote?
Certainly. Zeal Ahir. Javier Amescua.
Aye.
Adele Andrade Stadler. Phil Basser.
Aye.
Ryan Bayless.
Aye.
Catherine Barger. Brian Berkson.
Yes.
Daniel Brotman. Jeanette Burns. Denise Delgado. Jonathan Dimitru. John Dutre.
Yes.
Bubba Fish.
Yes.
Thank you. Received. John Gabbard. James Gaisley. Jason Gibbs.
Yes.
William Go.
Yes.
Kurt Hagman. Jan Harnick.
Yes.
Laura Hernandez. Lauren Hughes Leslie, Heather, Mike Judge,
Yes.
Fred Jung, Trish Kelly, thank you. Lauren Kleiman, Linda Krupa,
Yes.
Andrew Laura, Carlos Leon,
Yes.
Bridget Lewis,
Yes.
Richard Loa,
Yes.
Clint Lorimore, Ken Mann, Steve Manos,
Aye.
Ray Marquez,
Yes.
Larry McCallan, Marcia McLean,
Yes.
Tim McOsker, Dennis Michael, Linda Molina, Carol Moore,
Present?
Juan Munoz Guevara, Ara Najarian,
Yes.
Frank Navarro, Keith Perez, David Reddy,
Yes.
Gil Rebolar, Ed Reese,
Yes.
Gabriel Reyes, Crystal Ruiz,
Yes.
Ali Saleh, Steve Sanchez, Tim Sandoval,
Yes.
Zach Schwab, Emma Sharif, Marty Siminoff, Jeremy Smith, Ward Smith, Hilda Solis, Wes Speak, Karen Spiegel, Cynthia Sternquist,
Present?
Butch Twining, Steve Ty, Michael Vargas, Scott Boytz, Donald Wagner, Colleen Wallace, Alan Wapner, Thomas Wong, Zen Wu. Mr. Chair, the motion passes 29 in favor and 0 against.
Thank you, Ed. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to agenda item 1, which is the
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Somebody has their hand up. Frank Navarro. Go ahead.
Yes, I have my hand up. Mr. Chair, somebody keeps turning my camera off. And I got instructions this morning that I needed to leave it on. It has been on. Somebody turned it off.
Mr. Chair, we'll look into that. Mayor Navarro, that could be a security measure, as SCAG has been experiencing someone trying to, I'm not sure if it's happened today, but it's happened in the past where someone has tried to hack into our system. So disabling of your video may be a security measure. We'll look into it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention, Mr. Navarro, Mayor Navarro. Okay, again, let's go to action item number 1, election of chair and vice chair. First, like to just start out with the public. If any members of the public who wish to speak on this item, please come forward. I'm not seeing anyone. So we're going to go ahead and start with the position of Transportation Committee Chair. It's in your packet, but we have 2 nominations for Transportation Committee Chair. Have been received. The Honorable Mike Judge from Simi Valley, VCTC appointee, and the Honorable Thomas Wong, Monterey Park, RC District 24. So what I'd like to do is to give both Mike and Thomas an opportunity to say a few words, and then we can go ahead and open it up to comments, questions. We're going to start with you, Mr. Judge. You have 20 minutes. I'm kidding.
Wow.
I'm kidding. Yeah, I'm just kidding. No worries.
Well, thank you very much. It's been my honor to serve as vice chair on this committee for the past 2 years. I believe, just as all of you do, probably, that transportation in our areas is very important. Everybody that's ever served in elected office knows how busy transportation projects can be and how important they are to your constituents and your citizens. It's my belief and my duties here is to represent my transportation committee in Ventura County to my best of my abilities, and I believe I've done so. And I also believe that whether we might not always agree with what comes down from the state, our job here is to remind the state that when they do mandate things for transportation and transporting goods, that they come along with some funding, and we make sure we hold their feet to that to keep that funding flowing. Other than that, I would really ask for your support as I seek the office of chair. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Judge. Okay, Thomas Wong?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. And I'm happy to, I filed for both Chair and Vice Chair, just to confirm that. And then also I'm happy to defer actually and withdraw from the race for Chair and defer to my more senior colleague, Mr. Judge, on the Chair election. I'm relatively newer to SCAG. This is my second year on the Transportation Committee. Just looking for opportunities to continue to, as Mr. Judge pointed out, there are tremendous challenges ahead for our region on transportation and making sure we're reinvesting and investing in our infrastructure. It's been my honor as well to be part of this committee and to help lead the region and hopefully over the next few years continue to push forward on the investments we need to make and would gladly cede kind of the chair race to Mr. Judge and really compete for the vice chair role.
Thank you, Ms. Wong, for doing that. Much appreciated. So I'm just going to basically read the rules so that everyone knows what they are. And then we can discuss this before us and then take a vote. So in addition to nominees received before the meeting, SCAG's rules allow for nominations from the floor. Process for nominations from the floor in the election is as follows. A nomination does not need a second. A member can nominate themselves. You just simply please raise your hand to be called upon and announce your nomination. After additional nominations have been received, if applicable, council will repeat the names of the nominees. Seeing no more nominations from the floor, well, that's I've read a little too far here. Are there any other individuals who are interested or want to nominate someone at this time? I'm not seeing any hands. We could do the vote, meaning the vice chair and the chair.
So, Mr. President, just logistically, I believe, let me just confirm with Member Wong. Do you still wish to be considered to or nominated for the vice chair position? Because there are 2 nominees for that position. Yeah, so I think logistically it might be better to keep the chair, do one vote and then a second vote for the vice chair.
Good point raised, but we'll go ahead and take them separately. All right. So not seeing any other hands, not seeing any online. Okay, I'd be happy to entertain a motion. Okay, I have a first and a second. Okay, Ed. And the first and the second is to Mike Judge for Transportation Committee Chair, which, just so all of you know, he would begin as chair in June. Okay, so I'm not going yet. Very good. All right, let's go ahead and do the vote. Ed?
Zeal Ahir, Javiera Mescua,
Yes.
Adele Andrade Stadler, Bill Becerra,
Aye.
Ryan Bayless,
Yes.
Catherine Barger, Brian Berkson,
Yes.
Daniel Brotman, Jeanette Burns, Denise Delgado, Jonathan Dimitru, John Dutre,
Yes.
Bubba Fish,
Yes.
John Gabbard, James Gaisley, Jason Gibbs,
Yes.
William Go,
Yes.
Kurt Hagman, Jan Harnick,
Yes.
Laura Hernandez, Lauren Hughes Leslie, Heather Hutt, Mike Judge,
Yes.
Fred Jung,
Aye.
Trish Kelly, Laura Simon, Linda Krupa,
Yes.
Andrew Laura, Carlos Leon,
Yes.
Bridget Lewis,
Yes.
Richard Loa,
Yes.
Clint Lorimore, Ken Mann, Steve Manos,
Aye.
Ray Marcus,
Yes.
Larry McCallan, Marcia McLean,
Yes.
Tim McOsker, Dennis Michael, Linda Molina,
Yes.
Carol Moore,
Carol Moore, aye.
Juan Munoz Guevara,
Aye.
Ara Najarian,
Yes.
Frank Navarro,
Yes, Ed.
got it, thank you. Nikki Perez.
Yes.
For Nikki Perez, thank you, received. David Reddy,
Yes.
Gil Rebolard, Ed Reese,
Yes.
Gabrielle Reyes, Crystal Ruiz,
Yes.
Ali Saleh, Steve Sanchez, Tim Sandoval,
Yes.
Zach Schwank, Emma Sharif, Marty Siminoff, Jeremy Smith, Ward Smith, Hilda Solis, Wes Speak, Karen Spiegel, Cynthia Sternquist, Butch Twining,
Yes.
Yes.
thank you, received for Sternquist and Twining,
Thank you.
Steve Ty, Michael Vargas, Scott Boytz, Donald Wagner,
Aye.
Colleen Wallace,
Whoop, whoop. Yeah.
Love it.
Alan Wapner, Thomas Wong, Zen Wu. Mr. Chair, the motion is approved 32 in favor and 0 against.
Excellent. Thank you. Let's give him a nice big hand. Congratulations, Mike. Very good. Thank you, everyone. Let's go ahead and move on to the Transportation Committee Vice Chair. Currently, there are 2 nominations for TC Vice Chair. It is the Honorable Thomas Wong, Monterey Park, Regional Council District 24, and the Honorable Fred Jung, City of Fullerton, RC District 21. Are there any additional individuals who are interested in this position? Or they want to nominate someone? Okay, I'm not seeing any in the room. I'm not seeing any online. So let's go ahead and, Mr. Wong, anything you wanted to add?
Just appreciate would ask for my colleagues to vote and appreciate Mr. Jung's leadership as well on this committee and at SCAG. Haven't called anyone on this before, so just I know either of us would do a great job. Appreciate everyone's kind of thinking through this, and wherever the vote falls, happy to support and continue to engage in this committee. Would ask for support of my colleagues on the Transportation Committee, and look forward to really fully addressing and working on the challenges ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Mr. Wong. Mr. Jung?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations, incoming chairman. I'll be extraordinarily brief. I think in terms of regional committees, experience matters, but in regards to SCAG in particular, leadership experience matters. And I'm proud to have served on the Orange County Transportation Authority's Executive Committee for the past 2 years and currently chair the Lausanne Rail Corridor agency as well. I think the role of the vice chair is to support the committee members here on the Transportation Committee, as well as its newly elected chairman, and I look forward to serving accordingly. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Okay. So I guess I could just ask for comments, questions at this time. Are there any members of the Transportation Committee who have any comments, questions? Yes.
First of all, Juan Munoz Guevara from the city of Linwood. And Mr. Wong did not asked me to do this. But just want to share with all that I have had the opportunity to work with Mr. Wong over the years since getting elected. And I know that outside of his council duties, does substantial work on transportation and infrastructure here in LA County with Climate Resolve and LA Nature for All that do substantial work here across our county. So I would just ask for support for him. Thanks.
All right. Anyone else who would like to comment at this time? Yes, Schweiger.
Well, with that speech on behalf of one of the candidates who I honestly don't know particularly well, but seems very interested in getting involved with us, and I very much appreciate. I do want to put a plug in for my great colleague down in Orange County. I have served with Mr. Young on several boards down there. Orange County Transportation Authority, for example, the Orange County Power Authority. I know of his work in the city of Fullerton, and I find him to be constantly engaged, comes to meetings prepared, and with no disrespect, but sincere to either of the candidates, but experience with Mr. Young and a deep respect for him and the attention he brings to his job. I'd like to urge support for Fullerton's Fred Young.
Thank you for that. Anyone else in the room at this time? Yes.
I would just like to chime in as well and share support for Mr. Wong. He's been a phenomenal colleague. I have seen his dedication to transportation. I think we have two very qualified candidates for this role, but I would like to share my personal experience in working with Mr. Wong and his experience with transportation issues, climate issues, and the relationship between that, housing, and all of these other connected things. I think it's really important to have somebody that has that in their day job. So thank you.
Thank you for that. I'm not seeing any other hands up at this time. I do see one virtually, and that would be Mr. Reese. If you unmute yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to share just from my experience, my work with Mr. Wong. I currently serve as chair and have served as chair of the Transportation Committee for the San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments for a number of years now. I also serve as chair of the Foothill Gold Line Construction Authority for almost 4 years. I can tell you in my engagement with Mr. Wong that he is passionate about transportation, and I have had some great collaboration with him on a number of fronts, and happy to support Mr. Wong. It's no reflection on our colleague from Orange County. I'm again just sharing my perspective. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Reese. Okay. I am not seeing anyone else virtually. Did I miss it? Oh, yes, please.
I have a question for either candidates. I would just like to know their platform, or what exactly would they like to venture into if voted in?
All right, we'll start with you, Mr. Wong, and then you, Mr. Zhang.
Platform's very simple. Great to support the member. Well, make sure we're running efficient meetings here at the Transportation Committee, but also to make sure we're supporting and having avenues and opportunities for the members here, the diverse membership at SCAG, and especially those members of the Transportation Committee, to make sure our priorities are part of SCAG's larger priorities, and that we're advocating in one voice for the region for funding and for projects that we need, all of our communities and our cities need on the transportation front. As I noted earlier, and Mr. Chung as well, there are tremendous challenges in terms of making sure we're investing and reinvesting in our transportation infrastructure, and making sure we're investing in the future kinds of technologies that we need to have in our transportation infrastructure to improve mobility and address climate as well in our communities through the transportation investments that we're seeking to make, and just making sure we have a forum to come together as a region on these issues and to advocate in one voice to make sure federal and state funding and regional funding is directed towards those priorities in a shared way.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Mr. Zhang.
Thank you, sir. So much of good governance comes from local municipalities. Everything starts local. So for me, SCAG is a force multiplier to make sure that public transit, public transportation, which is largely funded at a state and federal government level. That funding continues, so we can serve all of our public equally and with equity. I think it's important that we reimagine what transportation looks like, especially in the Inland Empire where there's such tremendous growth right now, and particularly in Los Angeles and Orange counties where that growth has to not only continue, but be done in the most pragmatic way. So I look forward to being a part of the leadership here in SCAG to work with our staff, work with committee members to, again, support our local agencies. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Jung. Steve Manos.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. My question to both candidates is simple. Can you run a meeting and maybe give us a list of opportunities that you've had in the past to chair other committees or cities?
Did I go first, Chair?
You can go, Mr. Wong, and then you can go, Mr. Jung.
Yes, have chaired. I was mayor last year in Monterey Park. I was prior to being on the city council, was board member at my local water district for 10 years. I was the board chair there for 7 years, ran very efficient meetings. You can talk to any of my colleagues there, hopefully. And then also chair a few boards for nonprofits as well. So a lot of experience running meetings. I'm sure Mr. Jung has just as much, if not more experience running efficient meetings. And I'm sure both of us would not, whoever gets this, if we don't run efficient meetings, we'll probably not have a good chance at being reelected. We gotta keep things efficient at SCAG.
Hey, I don't know that anybody can call me inefficient when it comes to meetings. We're on time, under budget. So mayor this year, I was mayor in 2022, 2023 in the city of Fullerton, had the honor of chairing Orange County Power Authority. I chair the transit committee at Orange County Transportation Authority. I chair the transportation committee at Cal Cities, as well as chairing the Losan Corridor Agency as well this year. Thank you.
I love these very pointed questions that the transportation committee members are asking. Very good. Anybody else? Anybody else can top that? No? Very good. All right. So we have, I'm not seeing anyone on virtually either. So we have two candidates, Thomas Wong and Fred Jung. So the way it's going to work is when your name's called, you just say what name you support. Okay. That's all you have to do. And then Ed will tally it up. And then at the end, we will have a new vice chair starting in June. So,
Mr. President, if I may, I'm sorry
Yes,
to
please.
insert myself. It occurs to me that both of the candidates' names could sound similar, especially if we're dealing with folks remotely. So if you could say a first name and a last name, I'm sure that would be appreciated by the clerk, certainly not required. Or you could also go by first name. But either way, just to avoid confusion, be explicit and my mom used to say you got to have good diction. So please do that, or first and last name. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, very good. All right, Ed, we'll turn it over to you.
Zeal Ahir,
Mr. Fred Jung.
Javier Amescua,
Mr. Wong.
Adele Andrade Stadler, Andrade Stadler, if you did wish to state a vote, could you repeat it, please? I think we heard something but didn't get it completely. Phil Bossera,
Mr. Fred Jung.
Ryan Bayless,
The Honorable Fred Jung.
Catherine Barker, Brian Berkson,
Mr. Young.
Daniel Brotman, Jeanette Burns, Denise Delgado, Jonathan Dumitru, John Dutray.
Mr. Wong from LA County.
Thank you. Bubba Fish.
Mr. Thomas Wong.
John Gabbard. James Gaisley. Jason Gibbs.
Mr. Thomas Wong.
William Go.
Mr. Fred Young.
Kurt Hagman. Jan Harnick.
Thomas.
Laura Hernandez. Lauren Hughes Leslie. Heather Hutt. Mike Judge.
Mr. Fred Young.
Yeah, thank you. Fred Young.
Joe.
Thank you, please. Chris Kelly.
Fred Jung.
Lauren Kleiman. Linda Krupa.
Fred Jung.
Andrew Laura. Carlos Leon. Bridget Lewis.
Fred Young.
Richard Loa.
Thomas Wong.
Clint Lowermore. Ken Mann. Steve Manos.
Thomas Wong.
Ray Marquez.
Thomas Wong.
Larry McCallan. Marcia McLean.
Thomas Wong.
Tim McOsker. Dennis Michael. Linda Molina.
Thomas Wong.
Carol Moore.
Fred Young.
Juan Munoz Guevara.
Mr. Thomas Wong.
Aran Najarian.
Tom Wong.
Frank Navarro.
Mr. Thomas Wong.
Nikki Perez.
Thomas Wong.
David Reddy.
Thomas Wong.
Gil Rebolar. Ed Reese.
Thomas Wong.
Gabriel Reyes. Crystal Ruiz. Ali Saleh.
Thomas Wong.
Steve Sanchez. Tim Sandoval.
Thomas Wong.
Zach Schwenk. Emma Sharif. Marty Siminoff.
Fred Young.
Jeremy Smith. Ward Smith. Hilda Solis. Wes Speak. Karen Spiegel. Cynthia Sternquist.
Thomas Wong. Thomas Wong.
Thank you. Received. For Wong. Butch Twining.
Fred Jung.
Steve Ty. Michael Vargas. Scott Voigts. Donald Wagner.
Mayor Fred Young.
Colleen Wallace.
Thomas Wong.
Alan Wapner. Thomas Wong. Zen Wu. Mr. Chair, we show 20 for Wong and 11 for Young.
I think Crystal Ruiz is trying to unmute herself. You might want to get her vote. And
That's okay. I vote with the consensus.
did you get that, Ed?
Yes, sir. Received.
And the final vote again?
I'm
Hey,
sorry,
can you
Mr.
repeat
Clerk,
that?
could you repeat the vote, please?
22 for Wong and 11 for Young.
Very good. Great. Well, listen, at this time, I'd like to congratulate Mike Judge and Thomas Wong, our new vice chair.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to correct the record, staff and I were keeping count along with the clerk. I'm showing it's the same outcome, but there are 24 votes for Mayor Jung. Just I want the record to reflect that.
Wong.
14, excuse me. Goodness gracious. All of that for that.
Ruben's trying to
14
create more
points for
controversy
Jung.
here.
I was
Thank
not
you,
trying to tip the scales, I promise. I just don't know how to make sense of little lines. I apologize.
The election
Mr.
was
Wong.
rigged. Okay, no. Congratulations to everyone. Very good. All right, let's go ahead and move on to agenda item 7, which is regional recovery and resilience in the face of disasters policy discussion. I'd like to call up Annie Nam, Deputy Director here at SCAG.
Yeah, good morning, Chair. I'm just going to actually briefly introduce this item. We have a couple of speakers here with us today. As you all know, following the recent wildfires, SCAG held a regional discussion in February through our Joint Policy Committee meeting focused on rebuilding, recovery, and resilience. And we had a number of notable experts in planning, resilience, and disaster rebuilding and recovery join us at that time. We've been having a series of these discussions throughout each of the policy committee meetings back in March. In March, here at TC, we had speakers from Caltrans as well as the Ventura County Transportation Commission talking about their operational roles during emergencies, along with the importance of developing transportation evacuation plans. For today's meeting, we're going to, again, continue this discussion, and we have two presenters with us today. We're joined by Ryan Graham, who's the planning manager at the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority, who will provide an update on SBCTA's current resilience planning efforts, including their vulnerability assessments and adaptation planning for San Bernardino County. We're also joined by Brett Card, transit planner for the city of Pasadena, who'll speak about the city's preparation, response, and recovery efforts with the recent Eaton fire, highlighting the critical role of Pasadena Transit to evacuate residents. And so we'd like to, just for logistics here, we'd like to have the two presenters present their items, and then we'll run through the presentations and afterwards take Q&A. And with that, I'd like to invite up Mr. Ryan Graham.
Before Mr. Graham starts, I'm gonna want to see if anybody from the public wants to speak on this item. I'm not seeing anyone. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Ryan Graham. I'm a planning manager at the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority. I thank you for your time here today and the opportunity to provide you with some information as to what SBCTA is doing in the space of resilience planning. So our efforts at SBCTA go back a number of years. We began working with WRCOG in 2017 on the project Resilient IE. It was funded initially with SB1 planning grant funds. And as part of this effort, we worked to develop what we've all come to see as vulnerability assessments. We looked at areas within both Western Riverside County and San Bernardino County to identify potential areas that would be influenced by hazards that included heat, wildfire, flooding, drought, air quality, to name a few. As part of that, and you'll see on the map as an example here, this is a map of the increase in projected instances of extreme heat between now and our forecast year. So the mountains and the deserts continue to get hotter, as well as I guess significantly hotter relative to the rest of San Bernardino County. The second aspect of what we did with Resilient IE was we developed a toolkit. I'm sure many of your own respective jurisdictions and agencies have done something similar, but we are looking to best practices here, ways that we can take a particular hazard and then identify opportunities, whether it be in the form of actual infrastructure or planning and institutional changes to accommodate these types of hazards and impacts throughout the future. A second area where we are actively working right now is on evacuation planning, and in particular, our Interstate 15. So one of the concerns of our board is what would happen in a circumstance whereby which a major interregional interstate highway becomes severed from the rest of the transportation system. How do we handle both regional and interregional transportation, but evacuation in a circumstance such as that? And then as part of the recovery effort, what does that look like for interstate commerce and the types of commerce that runs through Interstate 15 on the way to both Arizona and Nevada? This, the idea of severing Interstate 15 from the rest of San Bernardino County may be a bit of an extreme circumstance, but it's not without precedent. We have seen in parts of in San Bernardino County in particular, we've seen the pass closed on a number of times, including the Blue Pet Fire in 2016, our Snowmageddon that recently happened a couple years back, as well as on occasion there have been known to be vehicle-to-vehicle shootings that have prompted closure. So it happens. This is also something that's happened recently with the Hughes Fire in Interstate 5. Where we've seen closures of the pass through Tejon, but also the Caldor Fire up in Northern California shut down US 50 for substantial periods of time, prompting redistribution of traffic in the areas. So why does this matter? Well, one, you can see in the picture, and as what was experienced in the Palisades. The infrastructure and the network become inundated with transportation, vehicles trying to exit, as this past closure in the picture provides evidence of. Shoulders start to begin being used, even though they're not necessarily designed for that type of behavior and that type of use. We've seen what happens in evacuations as well as emergency responses to pavement structures on shoulders and other aspects of the regional infrastructure that has not been designed for that. So we're looking at what does that mean? So part one is taking the information that we have had and based upon closures in the Cajon Pass and looking at how that transportation impacts be redistributed throughout the system's network. And from there, we will begin making recommendations to how to improve those corridors operationally and geometrically. So using a recent example, I'm going to scroll through here real quickly to give you an idea. This is using Iteris data, traffic data, based upon the Blue Pet Fire in 2016. You can see at 9 a.m. on August 16th, the Cajon Pass functioned very much like the Cajon Pass usually does. We see some slowing from the high desert area through the pass, and then that traffic begins being redistributed down Interstate 15 and 215. Nothing out of the ordinary there. As the fire breaks out and the Cajon Pass becomes closed, you start to see the immediate response from the traffic in the area. Immediately, you start to see the slowdown on southbound Interstate 15 in the Hesperia area, and you start to see some congestion at the interchange in Devore of Interstate 15 and Interstate 215 as traffic is getting rerouted. From there, you'll at 2:30 start to see the increase in congestion at those locations, but you also start to see State Route 18 as it is being used to help bypass traffic that would be going to the LA metro area, presumably, start to make its way towards the Palmdale Lancaster area, and you start to then see some queuing and some congestion at State Route 18 along in the Lucerne Valley area. And as we continue to proceed, at 5 p.m. you'll start to see these impacts become more peaked. The Lucerne Valley area, State Route 18-247, where it comes together in an intersection there, it becomes significantly red. The city of Big Bear Lake starts to become an area where traffic and congestion starts beginning to build as part of the system. So over the first 5 hours of the incident and the traffic, we start to see how people begin to respond. And as technology becomes more important part of our disaster response as well as recovery, the information here becomes important as we try to work with Caltrans to plan for how these disasters then impact our more rural transportation infrastructure. Moving on from that project and that effort that's underway, we are also working with WRCOG on a second project. This project is our Emergency Evacuation and Network Resilience Study. This project begins by helping and providing regional transportation funds to our local jurisdictions in an effort to improve on or to assist them with their requirements from the state to prepare compliance assessments that meet SB 99 and AB 747 requirements. I have a picture here that showcases Hesperia. This is the type of information that that we're doing for each of our jurisdictions as part of this effort. And in this particular instance, what we're looking at here, the grid that you see are traffic analysis zones, or TAZs as we refer to them, and how from those zones, how easy it is to evacuate beyond the city limits. And so that's what this map represents. And then as it drills down into it using the data that's collected for each of the locations, this gets to the the SB 99 portion of it, and we start to identify those parcel areas, those residential parcels that are only connected to the system by one point of access, in an area where we would want to then focus on future investments or opportunities to help with the emergency evacuation network in those areas. And then moving to our our next project that's coming up, we are looking at ways of improving evacuation and resilience centers. We're taking 5 locations within the San Bernardino County, and those areas would be the Phelan Pinion Hills, the Lytle Creek, Wrightwood, the Rancho Cucamonga and Upland Hills areas, as well as the Morongo Valley, and looking at ways that we can invest in the emergency evacuation system, following on the prior study that I just referenced, but also ways that we can incorporate resilience into our evacuation centers, focusing on microgrids, as well as other opportunities to help these centers provide a component of the overall disaster response and recovery effort. So that's what SBCTA is doing as an organization now, and we will continue to develop plans and infrastructure as a response to these studies. And I look forward to your questions if anyone has any on the information that I've provided in the next section. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Do we have a second presenter? Be happy to entertain your questions after the second presentation. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Transportation Committee, and thanks for having me. Again, my name is Britt Card. I'm a planner for the City of Pasadena, working with Pasadena in the Transit Department for Pasadena Transit. And we are the local transit system for the City of Pasadena. We pretty much just operate within the city. And I'm going to go through how we were able to help respond for evacuations with the Eaton fire. So just to recap, the fire started shortly after 6 p.m. on January 7th. We had already been watching what was going on with the Palisade fire, when we looked out our window and there was a fire in our own neighborhood. And as we all know, there was very strong winds over 70 miles per hour, so the fire spread very rapidly. And pretty much as soon as it started, we knew that this was going to be a big deal, and we were getting already calls for assistance. So before going into what happened that night, just a little bit about our preparation. So we're always involved. The city of DOT and transit staff are always part of the emergency preparedness and planning structure, due to our role in the community. And we always have specific roles in the Emergency Operations Center. But we were never considered to be the go-to agency for large-scale evacuations due to our smaller vehicles and our smaller fleet, and just our smaller staff size. But we we're experienced in providing some support in cases of emergencies. We are called for assistance. For example, we provide cooling buses when it's when like the heat is very intense. We've provided special assistance during the Hurricane Hillary. You might remember in 2023, we provided a special route to evacuate people that maybe were living on the streets to bring them to a evacuation center. And we also had a major windstorm in 2011 in Pasadena, which at least prepared us for what we might expect from the wind. And we knew from that experience that at that time we had to suspend service the next day because Pasadena has a lot of trees. So there was a lot of downed trees, roads were obstructed, bus stops weren't safe to service. And that, as I understand, is the only time that we've ever suspended service. So on the night of, as I mentioned, we got calls right away, stating that we were going to need to assist in evacuations. And that started around 7 p.m. And at the same time, Pasadena PD sent vehicles to our bus yard to act as escorts for our vehicles to start evacuating people. And we were also asked to stage vehicles on either side of town. The fire started on the east side of town, and we had vehicles staged on both the east side and the west side of town, so that PD they were delivering evacuees to the buses that were staged to be transported to the convention center, where an evacuation shelter was being set up in real time. And because the fire was spreading quickly, the vehicles that were staged on the east side of town moved to the Rose Bowl, where most of the staging happened after that, because the conditions became really bad really fast. They couldn't even see in front of them due to the smoke. So the first major evacuation took place around 8 p.m. At that time, it was at a senior facility, and the building was already on fire. So they were loading evacuees that were in wheelchairs, on gurneys, onto the buses, as well as nurses and other staff. And the requests kept coming throughout the night. And the largest one was at 5 a.m. And as many buses as we could provide were requested. They sent 12 vehicles up Lake Avenue, which was already on fire at that time. And they evacuated over 250 seniors and residents, and the area was already on fire. So they were basically pulling people out of wheelchairs, the gurneys, and putting them where they could in the buses. And on the slide, you'll see an image of inside. I wanted to show like the conditions, because remember that these are regular fixed route drivers. They drive on a route and they service customers. This is not something that our drivers were trained for at all. And a couple more facilities were evacuated after that. The winds died down the next morning, but fires were still kind of popping up around the neighborhood. And all in all, they evacuated hundreds of seniors. And the next slide will have a video. It's a short news segment, but I really want to highlight from our operations staff, our general manager, our maintenance manager, in their words, and you'll see the footage so that you can, I don't think talking about it really shows what they went through. So I think the video is going to be pulled up. I don't know if
I think AV staff is working on the video.
Okay. I was like, do I need to do something? This can be difficult sometimes, but I really think that some videos, it's an important part of my presentation.
Pasadena transit bus drivers being called heroes after rushing into flames of the Eaton fire to help evacuate senior citizens.
And Jasmine Veal is live in Altadena at one of the senior living facilities that burned to the ground with cell phone video of what these drivers faced. Jas?
It's pretty incredible, Juan and Pat. So this was a call for help. Not to first responders, though. Imagine you had staff members here with authorities frantically trying to get out dozens of seniors from this living facility, right as it began to burn at Washington and Altadena. And that's when Pasadena Transit bus drivers, yes, bus drivers got that call. And all across Altadena, they helped evacuate 500 people.
Right down Lake Avenue.
Yeah. Oh my God.
As flames closed in, a group of Pasadena bus drivers drove into the inferno last week.
Our eyes are red from all the ashes.
They were called to help rescue hundreds of people from senior living facilities across Altadena threatened by the Eaton fire.
Firefighters were helping, the nurses were helping. We're putting wheelchairs all the way down there, locking in place.
35-year-old Erasmo Rodriguez, an operations manager with Pasadena Transit, was the first to jump into a bus that night and race to Washington and Altadena, where he saw this chaotic scene as facilities burned.
We're just boarding the buses, getting as many people as we could. You know, it didn't matter where they sat, on the ground, anywhere. You know, leave your walker behind, leave your wheelchair behind. Fit as many people as we can.
Pasadena Transit maintenance manager Adan Morera says he also saw the fire on the hills near his home and came back to work to help.
I told my GM how many buses we need out there to help them evacuate. We took 4 more buses. It was horrible. Going up there, just a lot of black smoke, fire embers hitting the bus, hitting us. There's a bush in front of 7-Eleven caught on fire right in front of our eyes.
He says he did his best to comfort those seniors who were confused and scared.
So right here, I had an elderly lady. She had her dog. She got out of the house so fast she forgot the leash.
Letty Ochoa, Pasadena Transit's general manager, says she staffed 11 buses, sending them out in a caravan through the smoke.
You know, I said, you don't have to do this. And they're like, no, we want to do this. Let us do it. Like, we're on our way. So they didn't even think about it.
Risking their own lives for strangers and for those these bus drivers say they know well as regular passengers.
These guys are heroes, true heroes, because they're not trained for that. We're trained to move, you know, the city around, but not do this.
Rodriguez, though, refuses to be called that, saying he did what he had to do.
It needs to get done. Somebody needs to do it.
So many, as you can see behind me, seniors' homes that were lost, right? And sadly, Pasadena Transit tells me 2 of their employees, 2 bus drivers, also lost their homes in this fire, but none of those who were working to help evacuate so many people that night. Live here in Altadena, Jasmine Veal, KCAL News.
All right, Jasmine, thank you.
Just bring up my PowerPoint again. I think that video just really tells the story much better than I could. Yeah, so that was the night of the fire. The next morning, we provided continued assistance for the days after that first night. We transit staff was staffing the emergency operations center. We were providing assistance after that first night. Really, most of the efforts focused on the evacuation shelter that was set up at the convention center. So we were providing support around that wherever we could for transportation needs related to the shelter. We also had additional buses staged at the Rose Bowl through the weekend to support if further requests came through. And we were focused on the convention center and also the getting people to the disaster recovery center as that was getting set up as well. And then another way that we supported was by providing these sort of disaster assessment trips for local, state, and federal dignitaries. So obviously, right, the area was closed, but there were key decision makers and people that needed to get up there, and we were able to provide transportation support for that as well. And I wanted to just make a note about the impact on service as well for us. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we were prepared that we were potentially going to need to suspend service due to the impacts from the windstorm. In addition to the fire, there was a major windstorm in Pasadena and over 100 trees were downed. So we did suspend service for 2 days as the city was getting cleaned up, as we were on hand to assist with the emergency needs, and also the impact on our operators and our staff. If there's anything that I've learned out of this experience, it's that Pasadena and Altadena is a very tight-knit and local community. And even we had operators lose their homes, and many were evacuated. Many of us were evacuated during that time, or family were evacuated. So it had a big impact on our service delivery. And also the air quality and health impacts of the fire in those immediate days afterwards. So we had suspended service. We had reduced service after the first 2 days, and we also had detours that were necessary to avoid the burn area and areas that power had not been restored to. So we were really focusing on essential routes. Really during those first couple weeks, people were working from home. There wasn't a lot of activity in Pasadena, so we were focused on providing the service where it was really needed, especially along corridors where we were the only operator, and also to not interfere with any of the emergency activities that were taking place. As I mentioned, the Rose Bowl became a huge staging area. It's almost like a mini city down there where all the firefighters who came in from as far as Mexico to help assist with the efforts were staging down there. They had like camping down, they were like living down there. So in order to not interfere with that, we were adjusting our service. And this was I guess to conclude kind of my thoughts on this, it was and an effort that required teamwork on all levels. Extensive communication. We were talking to each other constantly. You know, how to serve the people that needs to be served, within what, you know, all of the things that I was mentioning, the challenges, and it was just very important for us to be continually communicating with each other. And I guess we'll take any questions now.
Thank you, Ms. Kirk.
Yeah.
Much appreciated. And so just be ready. My colleagues may have questions or comments. So I want to open it up to the room. Anyone would like to? Yes. Dragon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just that's a good report of what you did, but what was the lessons learned? What would you pass on to other transportation authorities? If you had to do 3 things from this experience, what is it?
I assume that was for me. I think, I mean, I think for me, like, I would suggest, you know, I think there are many, there are organizations that transit agencies can join. It was mentioned at a previous presentation that I was at to join the TransMAC, which is the Transit Mutual Aid Cooperative that does many, they do tabletop exercises and prepare for, you know, emergencies of this size. I think it's always important to remember that, you know, no matter how small you are, if you're there, you may be called. We weren't, like I mentioned, we weren't expecting necessarily to be providing assistance for evacuations at that level. It's just not something that we were necessarily prepared, even if we were doing emergency preparedness exercises and tabletop exercises, that because we were there, we were local, we had operators available. The fire started right when we were coming out of service, and we were able to quickly direct buses. I think, you know, for us, like, this isn't something that somebody else was going to come in and do for us. So
I'm sorry, I'm not going through it. Just you're
Yeah.
suggesting we attend EOC training, emergency operations training, maybe have some senior staff do it, maybe practice a couple routes and do an exercise, for example.
yes, that's great.
Perfect.
I have a quick
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call Linda Molina and then Zil here.
Thank you. It seems to me we're having more and more of these natural disasters type situations. And one of the big impacts to everyone is the immediate area where you have the people who are directly affected. But then you have the outside people who are affected as well if it involves closure of a freeway or a major arterial. And so my thought is, in all the planning that we do, I know you can call 511 sometimes to get information on things, but I think we have the technology where we can link all of our services, like cell phone service, our fire departments, and our mass transit systems, to let people know these are areas that you should be looking at. These are some possible exit areas. Well, I'm sure we have that technology. I think we need to put that in place to prepare people from bogging down areas where we know there are closures, or areas where people should stay away, to let people know that, so that you don't come upon an area because you didn't get advance notice that there was something going on, and now you're stuck in a traffic jam. So I would think that we would work on that, to connect all our technologies to let the public know when there's an emergency area, and it's also what can they do at the immediate time, is my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Zil here, and then we'll go to Jan Harnick and Carol Moore. Just so you know, we'll go to you when we go virtual. You'll be our first speaker. Thank you. You're on.
My question was for our previous speaker, our first speaker. When you mentioned something about research and analysis for the San Bernardino County in terms of transportation and other disaster possibilities. Am I correct?
I'm sorry. No, I'm
No?
what
Um,
what part of the research?
the climate, the possibility of having a
Okay,
disaster.
so going back to vulnerability assessments and
Vulnerability.
looking at, yes. Okay.
So what does that entail? What is the process of query and what is the time frame from research to implementation?
So I mean, this is it's looking at recent climate change data and on a variety of hazards and potential risks to include, wildfire, across the gambit, mudslides, um, and it looks at, I believe the Resilient IE study took it out to 2040. I wasn't actively the one that did the study, but I believe it took it out to 2040, and it looked at what the change in those projected climate behaviors would be and what that would have as an impact on the system. So, for instance, the days of extreme heat. We know that the climate is getting warmer, and so what are the types of mitigation measures that we can put in place? An example, to transit services would be the use of shelters and transit shelters, the types of cooling facilities that may become available, but also things as it relates to pavement and pavement structure. So, we need to use a pavement type that would be able to withstand the extreme heat, particularly as we get out into the more extreme heat in the deserts. That is one thing that the first responders in Paradise, for instance, mention as a part of their difficulties in helping and supporting the evacuation, is that the fire and the heat from the radiant heat from the fire did create problems where the pavement structures start to fail. And with the weight of these emergency response vehicles, they can be bogged down in the asphalt concrete or other portions of the transportation infrastructure. And so as those become bogged down, then it starts to create additional impediments to evacuating people. So the emergency responders are going in, the people are trying to get out, and we can wind up in circumstances where there is a possibility of the response inhibiting the evacuation. And so that's where one of the areas I know that our executive director, Ray Wolf, has been working with Caltrans is to try and to do more to improve the peripherals of the highway. So bring shoulders up to full pavement cross sections. Oftentimes Caltrans presents the argument against it is that it could be used at some point in the future for kind of a sneaky capacity enhancement to a roadway that side skirts some of the environmental regulations that may be put in place. But in times of emergency response and evacuation, that is an area where we do stand and desire the ability to help. Yes,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
And to follow up with that, just what are the entities involved for this evaluation?
So this particular study was done with consultant support through WRCOG was the lead agency, SBCTA was the supporting agency for WRCOG. This type of study was then replicated across each of the Caltrans districts throughout the state. Following on, vulnerability assessments were done first, and then adaptation strategies and those were then followed up on as a second phase to that for each of the Caltrans districts as well.
Okay, then why 2040?
We have to model a forecast year at some point. I believe at the time it probably nested within the regional models that we had, the tools that we had in place.
Awesome. And then last question, I'm sorry, you mentioned resilience centers or the evacuation centers and have a component for resiliency within it. Not during non-evacuation timeframe, would they just be idle or are they up to another use?
So that's a good point. And it's something that we're working on for resilient centers. They generally need to be tied into evacuation centers or other community centers that do have a regular presence within their communities. It doesn't make sense to invest all of this money into infrastructure that then would be sat idle. So it is part of our efforts to work with churches or other community facilities within the neighborhoods to be able to provide that support. So that way, when emergencies call on them to be able to help support the response, they have the infrastructure in place. That's part of the reason why we're looking at and evaluating how we can incorporate microgrids as part of that, as emergencies happen, as these fires take out portions of the electrical grid. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be in the immediate vicinity of the fire. These grid impacts can be many, many miles away, as Edison is preventative and proactive and trying to shut down other parts of the grid. So providing these opportunities for the community to be able to have electrical and other power needs met through stored power or solar, depending on the time of day.
Lastly, sorry.
No, it's all right. Thank you.
Any
Ms.
plans
Ms.
for-
I apologize.
Oh, yeah.
I have 4 more speakers.
Oh,
I have 2
sorry.
other items to get to. My apologies to you.
Okay.
If so I want to get to the 4 speakers.
Uh-huh.
And if you don't want to speak, that's perfectly fine too. But I want to make sure we get finished by 11:45 so that we're in preparation for regional council. So
Okay.
my apologies to you.
No, thank you.
I have 4 more speakers. I have Nikki Perez, Colleen Wallace, Karen Spiegel, and online Carol Moore. So that'll be the final number of speakers at this time. So we can move on to the next item. My apologies. Ms. Perez.
Thank you. My questions are for the speaker from Pasadena. I'm right next door in Burbank. So I'm just wondering, what's your fleet size? How many buses do you all have?
We have 40.
40. Then did you use the whole fleet? Or-
No.
Okay. About how many?
The max that went out was 12.
12. Okay. And thinking of the future, are you all looking at some kind of emergency response training for your current drivers?
That's a good question. And our service is delivered by a contractor, so they are responsible for training their drivers and all that stuff. So I don't really know the answer to that question because
I'd love to talk to you about it in the future and just
Definitely
see our
reach out.
Tri-Cities if we can do something there.
Yeah, for
Thank
sure.
you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. If we could also just put your signs down if you've spoken. Colleen Wallace, you're up.
So this is for you, sir. So
Mr. Graham.
the question I have, I see that you partnered with WRCOG and they're the lead agency, but have you guys even seen I'm just taking from Calamasa all the way to the desert area. We need a plan for evacuation because the winds are bad down there. I was in a dust storm down there the other day. So I was just wondering, do you guys have plans like how will we evacuate from, fires do start down there? Like I'm from Banning and we had a couple of fires last year. So do you guys have plans for evacuation from the Coachella Valley because we're considered the eastern part of the desert. So I was just wondering.
Sure, thank you. As far as current evacuation plans go with SBCTA and the pass and the Coachella Valley, that's nothing that I'm actively working on. The part about Interstate 15 and the emergency bypass study that I was referencing is that when we do have a severed link in our regional transportation system, there then becomes impacts that would be felt by other adjacent communities. In this instance, looking at the Interstate 10 would be an example where traffic that would otherwise be going to Nevada or Arizona via Interstate 15 now goes out Interstate 10. It then may go up 62, so that way it can connect with Interstate 40 to the north. So there's this distributive impact. And so we are looking at least the regional transportation in San Bernardino County to make improvements in Yucca Valley, to make improvements in the Morongo Basin, as well as the high desert. A great example of something that you're mentioning, and I'll be mindful of time, but the lithium-ion battery fire that took place on Interstate 15 just south of Baker last year is a great example of, it doesn't have to be a natural disaster. This is an instance where it was a man-made disaster, but it shut down the freeway for 48 hours in the dead of summer, and we needed to be able to figure out a way to help support the people while they're distressed and in need of emergency support. So this is something that is important going forward. Yeah.
Thank you. Alrighty, I have Karen Spiegel and then Carol Moore, and that's it.
Thank you.
And brevity is appreciated.
I
And I
know.
apologize that we're running a tight
I
schedule
know, I'll
here.
make it very quick.
Thank you.
Don't keep telling me and wasting time. Just real quick, I'm going to be the devil's advocate, this whole climate thing. We all have different opinions of it. And, you know, going back in history, we've had warmer days than we have now. It was hotter. And then we had colder days, and we don't acknowledge that. And we're blaming our old behavior. And yet we're encouraging innovation. I mean, the buses and all the things that we had to use to help people were things that we created that now are contributing to it. If we keep doing the finger pointing, how do we come out of this without conserve water so people don't brush their teeth with the water running anymore? I mean, that does nothing in the big scheme of things. Are we really making a change? Are these little changes going to make a difference? Because I know they say it's human behaviors, you know, making it accelerate, but how much? I mean, you know, we're talking, how do we know what happened 144 million years ago?
Sure. Yeah, I don't know that I'm here to debate the merits of climate
Well,
change.
you
And
mentioned climate change. though.
sure, no, this is part of
Great
you
answer,
know,
Mr. Graham. You're good. You don't need to answer anymore.
the part that I would make a quick point though would be not necessarily on the merits of climate change or not. There are reasonable things that we can do when implementing infrastructure that may have positive benefits over the life cycle of that investment. Using an example, using metal posts on guardrail instead of wood posts. They they can withstand a fire easier should a fire break out and a recovery is necessary. But yet it doesn't necessarily, disprove or prove, the impact of climate change.
Good point.
Thank you, Mr.
I'll
Graham.
take it.
All right, just one final speaker. Carol Moore, you're online. If you'll unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to both speakers. My question is, we see these disasters occur and people getting out is critical. I believe I just heard there were 18 people who died in these recent fires. That's a terrible number. And my question has to do when I saw the first photo and I saw the trucks and I saw the cars and people trying to get out. Is there goods are important, but in a case where you're trying to get out for your life, is there a hierarchy of safety regarding goods vehicles versus people trying to escape? Thank you.
Very good.
Do you understand the question?
I do understand. And in terms of regional planning, the SBCTA is mostly concerned with the ability for the region to respond as a whole to the disaster evacuation and recovery. A truck, if it's on the road at that particular time, is unfortunately or fortunately, depending on which side of it you're on, is going to take space on the road, and we need to get that vehicle in or out as well. So we don't have anything in terms of how we would prioritize getting the regional system handled, but in each of your own jurisdictions, I'm sure you have emergency response and disaster recovery methodologies in place that you would each then begin implementing. And I'm not sure if Pasadena has an experience on that end.
Thank you. All right. So that concludes this part of the agenda. If we will provide Ms. Card and Mr. Graham's email information so that if you have any additional questions that you want to ask, you can certainly do that. We're going to go ahead and bypass agenda item 8 and move to agenda item 9, which is the last mile freight program, preliminary findings. And before I call up, welcome, Mr. Laws. You're good. Come on up. Just want to see if there's any members of the public who wish to speak on this item. Not likely. Already. Mr. Laws, you're on.
All right. Hi, committee members. Thank you for having me. Trying to be as efficient here as possible, so you'll see me kind of blast through some of these slides. But before I get started, just want to say thank you to the folks in the Goods Movement Aviation Business Unit to help put this report together, specifically Xiaoling Fang, She developed some of the maps that you'll see in the report. And for the sake of time, let's get right into it. So a bit of background on the Last Mile Freight program. So this program was developed in partnership with the Mobile Source Air Pollution Reduction Review Committee, or MSRC. SCAG is the sole source implementer of the program, which started back in May 2021. And the program itself is focused on medium duty and heavy duty zero and near zero emissions vehicles. We're using $16.75 million of award monies to go to fleets that want to invest in zero and near zero emissions vehicles. Now, this is impacting the South Coast Air Basin, so that includes the counties of Los Angeles, Orange, Riverside, and San Bernardino for context. 40% of the funding that we're using is going to small businesses. 90% of it is going to projects investing in battery electric technology. The rest of it is going to compressed natural gas. And the data that I'm going to be sharing throughout this presentation deals with 18 of 22 different projects that have been funded by the program. So keep in mind that this is a cross section of the program. It's not everybody who's going to be funded at the end of the day. Okay. All right, so let me just skip right into some of the distinctions between the two vehicle categories I mentioned. Like I said, 90% of the funding is going to battery electric, 10% is going to compressed natural gas. Now, that was not by way of how the call was designed, but rather where the demand was when the call was opened. So all applicants just asked for those two vehicle categories. But we ended up with some interesting findings in terms of the types of projects they're building out with this. So the battery electric projects tend to be much larger in scope, usually involving multiple vehicles as well as infrastructure build-outs. CNG projects, on the other hand, it's a lot of independent owner operators that are accessing funds for those vehicles. So really, most of them are just buying one single vehicle for them to operate for their own personal operations. Now, as far as infrastructure goes, this might be something that some of you are thinking about. The battery electric projects are mainly reliant on their own infrastructure build out. So the people who are buying the vehicles are also putting down the cash to build the infrastructure to charge the vehicles. CNG projects, on the other hand, can use publicly available infrastructure out there in the region. Project scopes are more complex in turn for battery electric versus the CNG projects. The CNG projects are mainly focused, or actually exclusively focused, on port drayage operations, meaning that they're moving containers from the ports of LA and Long Beach to other areas in the region and taking those same containers, bringing them back to the ports. Okay. Sorry, I'm going to skip the maps. Sorry, Xiaoling. So let's talk about some of the meat of what we found. Based on the reporting that we've received, which I should mention, we get 6 months of data reporting from all of the participants as part of this program. We saw significant emissions reductions for both battery electric and CNG. So using the calculations from the reporting, without any surprises, zero emissions vehicles reduce 100% of the tailpipe emissions that would have come from diesel equivalents. On the other hand, if you look at CNG, they perform very highly in two specific categories. That's NOx emissions and PM 2.5. These are significant as these are considered criteria pollutants that affect human health. It's also what the federal government uses for their air quality standards. So something to keep in mind there. Now, to go a bit into return on investment, let's talk a bit about one of the hot button issues when it comes to technology shift. That is vehicle range. So you can see on this graph here, well, it's a little bit light on the left, but the estimates we received say that a Class 8 diesel vehicle, which all of these vehicles I'm talking about in this cross-section of 18 projects are Class 8. They can go about 1,300 miles on a full tank. You take it down to CNG, that ends up being around 805 miles, so about 60% of that. If you go down to battery electric, 250 miles is currently what we've seen Class 8s can go range-wise. That being said, the technology itself is advancing, and I will say that the battery electric participants have done a good job of being nimble and vigilant in trying to use their vehicles strategically to do short range travel rather than being concerned with middle or long range travel. So they're still able to be used effectively. It just means that you need to be smart about how you're using them. Okay, let's talk about cost. That's another thing that I'm sure people are thinking about. Unfortunately, it's been cut off at the bottom, but on the left there is a graph showing CNG projects. That figure actually amounts to about 280,000. And on the right, battery electric projects, that amount adds up to about 450,000. So that's per vehicle, the cost that it is to purchase. Now, this chart breaks it up in terms of where the funding is coming from. You can see at the bottom, the last mile freight program is paying for, on average, a little over $70,000 per vehicle for CNGs. It's over $150,000 for battery electric. Seems about right in terms of scale, paying for a similar amount in terms of like the overall cost of the vehicle, or at least I'll say it's proportional. Now, one thing I do want to point is this middle section, which is a very large amount. That is money that these programs, or rather that these projects, are taking from other programs and stacking on top of our funding. So what we're seeing here is that the current environment in Southern California, it's got a lot of opportunities for grant funding to help these operators purchase vehicles at a price that doesn't completely break the bank for them. So you can see at the very top, that's what they're actually paying at the end of the day. So it significantly reduces the cost on the vehicles. That being said, this does not take into account also money that may have been spent in terms of match funding on things like infrastructure build out, or potentially payments made to consultants or other entities to help with preparing some of this. Okay, last two slides here. I just want to talk about some of the similarities and differences we've seen in terms of the benefits and the setbacks from the technologies. So as far as benefits go, we're seeing that there are significant reductions both for CNG and BEVs in terms of criteria pollutants. Also, we've heard that there are lower maintenance and fuel costs, although the exact magnitude we're still trying to figure out. I think by the time we're done with the entire group of 22 projects, we'll have a much better idea of that. Also, as I mentioned before, the funding environment makes it so that they can actually pay less than what they would for a new diesel vehicle out of their own pocket. Now, that is assuming that they take advantage of various grant opportunities like the Last Mile Freight Program to pay for these vehicles. As far as some separate positives, CNGs, they can operate in the field in a way that's much more similar to diesel counterparts. Some of that is the vehicle range, the fact that it's closer, but also it's the fact that they are fueling at the pump just like a diesel vehicle does. So they don't have to wait to charge like battery electric does. Because battery electric has issues with vehicle range and charge, they have to be, again, more strategic about how they use the vehicles. Oh, big thing here, battery electric does get higher rates in terms of lowering emissions for greenhouse gases. So that's one thing, one cap in the hat for battery electric for sure. Now, as far as the setbacks, as I mentioned, both of them run into challenges in terms of vehicle range, battery electric a bit more than CNGs. That said, the technology is advancing. It's just a matter of when they get to the point where they're able to stay operationally competitive with diesel. One thing I do want to note on the CNG side in comparison. So we know that there is legislation and we're in a regulatory environment within this state that is encouraging zero emissions transition, specifically toward battery electric. We see that in the long term. There are questions about exactly what you do with the near zero options, such as compressed natural gas, and what the environment will look like in 10, 15 years. There's still some uncertainty there. So that's one thing that is kind of a knock on CNG versus battery electric. And I will note one thing before I go. There is an item at RC today. It's an action item to grant acceptance of $51.5 million in CPRG funding that's being leveraged by SCAG in collaboration with the South Coast Air Quality Management District to expand this program. So what you've seen so far is some of the work that we've done mainly with Class 8 vehicles. But we're trying to expand this to Class 4 and Class 5. As you can see, there's valuable learnings that we're getting from being able to actually operate these vehicles on the road that can inform some future work. Some things coming down the pike for us include the Comprehensive Sustainable Freight Plan. We're about to get that going, as well as a freight TDM strategy and implementation plan. Those are both things here at SCAG that will be informed by this work. So if we can accept this additional 51.5 million, that gets us closer to being able to learn more and also contribute some of those learnings to work that we're doing to help improve conditions around the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Laws. I'm going to ask that my colleagues, should they have any questions or comments, that they can send them to Mr. Laws. We'll make sure we provide you his email. Don't mean to cut you off. I understand. I see Carol Moore, you have your hand up, but I'm mindful of our time, Carol. If you don't mind, if we give you Mr. Laws' email information, you can please feel free to do so. Thank you, Mr. Laws. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
And I'm up next, actually, so I'm going to keep my comments incredibly short. Please join me in welcoming our newest member, Zilla here of the city of Artesia. Welcome. Thank you for being here. I have 17 more bullet points, but I'm not going to read any of them. Let's go to the Metrolink report. Marty Siminoff from the city of Bray.
I'll keep it short for you too. Metrolink is reviewing its dedicated funding sources and looking to reduce the member agency financial support. Also, Metrolink is actually really preparing hard now for the LA 28 for the Olympics. So they're working to prepare and have all their vehicles and all their trains running. And then some ridership information. There's been some freight interference with BNSF because they've had some issues with crime occurring on the trains and preventing them from finishing their runs, and it's been holding up some of the Metrolink. And then one last thing to get you out of here early is on Earth Day, Tuesday, April 22nd, Metrolink rides will be free. So in all the county areas. So that will conclude my report.
Thank you, Marty. Alrighty, any member announcements? Not hearing any? Thank you very much. Everyone, thank you for your participation. This meeting is now, I'm sorry, I do have to acknowledge David here.
Yeah, staff, we want to remind folks to register for the General Assembly if you haven't, and also take a point of personal privilege to thank Chairman Sandoval for his service here at the committee. I know I speak for staff. Yes, I speak for staff when I tell you thank you, and we appreciate your leadership and congratulations to Vice Chairman or Judge. So that concludes my report.
Thank you. I'm sorry I cut you off for that. Alrighty, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.